Welcome to wesleygospel.com. This is going to be my first real True Blue podcast uh, recording. So, my daughter suggested to me that I should use. She said the word podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, podcast. That's right. That's where you just record an audio file, an MP3 file, and then you don't do a video. And then you can put it on platform like Spotify. You can put it on YouTube. You can put it on WordPress, but you can put it on Spotify, and a lot of people use Spotify. So I'm going to try to start going over into that platform too. Video is pretty much confined to YouTube, but this enables me to reach both YouTube and Spotify and WordPress. So Uh, also, you don't have to look at the ugly background of my video, and I don't have to be all self-conscious about the appearance of my sweaters and things like this. So, this is going to be the new platform going forward. Uh, I'm going to continue to do these podcast type things, and all this is really is just an MP3 file with a little thumbnail thingy. I'm using a program called Audacity to record my stuff, and then I will import it into something called YouTube Movie Maker. Um, you know, so anyway, it's a little bit of an adjustment, but I think it's gonna be a good idea. All right, um, I'm going to review the first 7 chapters of Financial Freedom by Grant Sabatier. Um, this guy is, I don't agree with 100% of what he says, but he's very unique and very helpful in that he clarifies a lot of things or confirms a lot of the things that I had come to conclude in studying the Puritans and the history of biblical economics on the question of increasing income, which has got to be really the ultimate question in personal finance, biblical or non-biblical. How can I make more money than I am making right now is really the ultimate money question. And let me tell you, it's not easy to figure this out. This is not one of those things that's front and center, you know, out in the open in these personal finance books. You really have to dig and dig. You have to read like at least 20 personal finance books to find this out, at least. But let me just tell you straight out the gate what it is. Entrepreneurship, side hustles, working 2 and 3 jobs on the side in addition to your day job is how you do it. Now, I understand that by hearing that, you're probably thinking, there's no way I can do that. Well, don't sell yourself short and don't jump the gun because you need to read about it to figure out what just that means. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this. So don't get discouraged when you hear that, oh, I'll never be able to do that. Just hold your horses, okay? Read about it, study about it. You know, there's ways to do this. But the real chapter that he really speaks about this on is chapter 5, Next Level Money, and probably chapter 9, which I haven't gotten to left yet. In my case, my skill set is the business development representative. So that means that for me, I work a full-time job from home, and then I'll have another job on the side as a 1099 where I have more freedom to, you know, not be pulled into meetings all the time. And then I get one from my wife as well. And she does varsity tutors. So that means we're having 4 jobs operating at the same time with the goal of pulling in 127,000 a year. And then we can save large percentages of those incomes. That's in the 1800s methodology laid out by William Matthews in Getting On in the World. what they called building a pile. Uh, was you just set aside, socked away large amounts of your savings into a savings account. That's it. Just saving 100% cash gradually from a high income. Okay, you're making a high income, step number one, through having multiple streams of income, multiple jobs. Okay, so you're in this $100,000 range, but now you're saving 50, maybe even 60% of your income into a savings account that's not being used for utilities. And in the 1800s, they called that building a pile. Okay, building a pile. No stocks, no bonds, no rental income, no real estate investing, no investing. It's an anti-investing idea. Literally it is. It's an anti-investment idea. Getting getting on in the world by William Matthews and what they did back then. It was, we're just going to build a pile. That's it. That's all we're going to do. We don't have to worry about the fear of loss. We don't have to worry about stock market fluctuations. We don't have to worry about the fear of loss. We're just going to gradually keep on saving little by little to make it grow, like the book of Proverbs says. So that's where I'm at right now. I do not agree with Grant in that he puts a really heavy emphasis on stocks and mutual funds over the 30-year stretch. So he has a lot of that conventional wisdom that he's borrowed from reading other people on personal finance. I don't agree with him on that 401k type mentality. But that's not why I bought this book. I bought this book because I had Googled, is it possible to make $1 million in 5 years? And I found that he had done this. And I wanted to figure out how he did it. How did he do it? How did he make $1 million in 5 years? Well, it was through starting side hustles. He started doing side hustles. Side hustles is his methodology of dramatically increasing income. So he has an entire chapter on this called Next Level Money, Chapter 5. I'm going to start reading some selections. This is a very unique book. He's also contemporary. He's 2019, and he's about my age, and he's a philosophy grad, and he was living with his parents in the Great Recession. So I can really relate to this guy in terms of struggles and just personality type. Um, but I'm just going to kind of go through some of the highlights that I found. Yes, I totally agree with him what he says on page 93. He said, the problem with most personal finance advice is that it focuses primarily on two of these three variables, how to reduce your expenses to increase your savings. But you can only cut back so much before you feel like you have to live in a cardboard box before you ever want to be financially secure. And then he said, increasing your income is more powerful than cutting back your expenses because you can only cut back so much, and it gives you the opportunity to invest more money more often, accelerating the rate of compounding and growth of your money. Of course, he's a heavy believer in using things like mutual funds, blue chip stocks in a IRA or something like that. I don't like that because stocks can, I lean towards the 1800s views. Like the stock market is to be shunned because you can just lose everything from stock market crashes. So I like the idea of building a pile with 100% cash and avoiding these compound growth concepts because you can lose everything. Then where's your compound growth then, right? I don't like that. But he talks about crazy things like people saving 60 or even 80% of their income. Of course, you can only do this when you reach the $100,000 range. But this is generally the goal. You're reaching $100,000 a year or more, which is about the range that William Matthews puts you at as well, as a financial success annual income level. Let's see here. But page 104, money-making strategies are usually confined to W-2s, 1099s, and investing. Full-time employment, side hustling, entrepreneurship, and investing are the 4 ways of making money to him. Of course, I'm at this stage very, very skeptical of the stock market because of the fluctuations and losses that you can incur. So if you're looking about a stable way to build a pile, it's full-time employment and it's side hustling and it's entrepreneurship. And he actually advocates a hybrid approach, and I agree with him, at least when you're starting out, that you should never just go 100% into 1099s. And suffering some losses from foolish marketing things I did this year, I can totally agree with the guy. Don't quit your full-time remote. Now, he does say remote. Work remotely with a W-2 job, but don't quit that. Hang on to that. Let that be your stable base because they will provide you with PTO. They will provide you with more financial security. They will provide you with, it's just better. Just hang on to a remote full-time W-2 and then have maybe another computer desk for a 1099 job to side hustle on the side that's not so demanding of your time and is not meeting intensive. Another aspect of the W-2 job is that they're always going to have new skills that you can learn. Usually these are bigger companies with big teams, and you can learn new skills. So you can hone your trade better. So he's basically saying, if you want to increase your income, number 1, work 100% remote. Number 2, have 2 computer desks essentially. Work 1 W-2 and then work at least 2 or 3 1099 side hustles. Now, if you've got a wife, you can, make the 2 or 3, the 3 or 4 thing a lot easier. He does use, at one point, he uses the expression multiple streams of income, which is an expression I've run across several times. There is an audiobook called that, and it's by Nightingale Conant, and I'm thinking about looking into it. It's called Multiple Streams of Income. It came out about 20 years ago, and I remember seeing that expression. It's a strange expression. When I was a security guard at Strayer University in 2010, I remember seeing a black woman had posted a flyer in the cafeteria at Strayer University, and it was about multiple streams of income. So this idea of multiple streams of income is exactly what he's talking about here. This is how you increase your income. And it's through side hustles. This is the idea of the side hustles. But you've got to make sure that the side hustles, that the time and the money are coalescing together in a reasonable and logical way. Okay, so that the side hustle is not turning into an 80-hour work week or some junk like that. He believes in rental income, and I think you should take that with a grain of salt. I'm skeptical about it because when you're a landlord, there's expenses that can come. But then again, there's commercial real estate and there's apartment real estate. So I don't know about that as an idea in the long term. Okay. He talks about turning your side hustle into a passive income stream. So the idea that maybe, after building a pile from your side hustle. So he believes that the full-time job is where your utility money goes. Your side hustle is where all of your savings money goes. So the side hustle becomes the source for all of your savings account. If you're building a pile to a point, you might want to parlay that into rental income to get passive income off of that eventually. And that's his main idea of passive incomes from rental income. Although he has a lot about dividends in there as well. So I don't like dividends because, again, the fluctuations and the ups and downs of the stock market, I don't like it. Okay, so that's that. Now there were a couple other moments where he just kind of pointed at it, and I'm going to do that now. see if he, added anything worth commenting upon here on this area, where he just kind of pointed at it again here and there in little snatches. Um, Page 14 is remote work. The idea he's operating on is one of being remote from home um, or while traveling with a laptop. Um, Part-time jobs can be the side hustle. Let's see here. Launching side hustles again. As you make more money in your full-time job and launch side hustles, dot, 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 page 122. Okay, this is how he thinks when it comes to making more money than you currently are now. 152 and 153. Here's just a really good one-liner. He says on page 152 and 153, if you're making a ton of money at your full-time job or with your side hustle, dot, dot, dot. So this is clearly his main way of thinking of how to increase your income. And most people just simply, in these personal finance books, just simply do not touch this. They don't touch this. It's all based off of budgeting off of some low income paycheck and waiting for some, socking away a little bit of money into a mutual fund and then waiting for 30 years. It's insane. You're never going to get anywhere with something like that. So this guy's right on. He's basically teaching what the Bible does without really being aware of it. This is exactly what Ecclesiastes 4 says. This is exactly what Proverbs 31 says, that you've got at the very least, 2 to 3 income, business income, paycheck income coming into the household between the husband and the wife. So I'm going to go over that now. There is biblical support for this. It says in Ecclesiastes 4, 9 to 12, two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. That's talking about their jobs, their work, their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone, and he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, this is talking about husband and wife. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. So this is talking about the husband and the wife. Dual income household. If one loses a job, well, the other person's job, the other spouse's job will support them when he falls, okay? Then it talks about how the husband and wife being together, they're companions, and so they're not lonely. And also, if a person breaks into their house and one of them gets attacked, well, the other one could come in and save them. So there's so many benefits to being married, okay? But one of them is to have two streams of income in the house. In case one loses a job, the other one supports it, okay? It's a backup plan. Proverbs 31. Now this teaches three streams of income between the husband and the wife. Proverbs 31, 10 to 31. And because it's such a long sort of poetic passage, it can be hard to find it, but it's in there. If you really are looking for it, there's three streams of income in this passage for the family. And it's specifically in Proverbs 31, verses 16 and 24, and verse 23. So it's verse 16, 23, and 24. The Proverbs 31 woman, the wife, has two streams of business income. She is a clothing manufacturer. You could call that whatever you want. You could call it a seamstress. She manufactures clothes and linens, and then she goes into the town and sells them to the merchants. Then she buys a vineyard and becomes essentially a vineyard manager. So she's going to have two streams of business income, okay, in Proverbs 31:16 and verse 24. Now her husband has a stream of income, probably paycheck income as a judge in verse 23, because it says that he sat at the gate. So that implies that he was probably a judge or worked for the local court system or whatever it was, and was receiving a W-2 paycheck. So the household, and notice also the wife was not working outside the home. Now she traveled into town to sell her product, but she was really mainly mostly working around the household, and at times even at nighttime to finish up some of her products. So her husband had a day job as a judge, so he worked outside the home all the way. But the wife was around the house, she was around the servants, and she was around the children in the day. There's three streams of income there. Okay, the wife was self-employed, and the husband was probably employed as a judge working for the city. All right, so three streams of income there between the husband and the wife. In William Perkins, who was a Puritan, this idea traveled into the Puritans. The Puritans, as you may know, were persecuted by the Church of England, and many of these pastors who used to be Anglican priests were persecuted by the Church of England and were no longer able to receive church paychecks. Richard Baxter was an exception to that, but a lot of them were not able to get those church paychecks, and so they had to go and get jobs, start businesses, go into business for themselves usually, and then build up a pile of money and start a church so that they could preach according as their conscience dictated. The first of these puritanical business ethic treatises was the Treatise of the Vocations by William Perkins. In page 54, he taught that having two jobs was a good idea, basically holding to the Ecclesiastes 4 view that one job will back you up in case you lose the other one. He said that it is good for every man to have two strings to his bow on page 54 of the treatise. So basically, you know, your bow and arrow that you use is the tools that you use to go and hunt out in the business world to hunt food for your family. If one of your bowstrings breaks, okay, you can't hunt for food. But if you have a backup bowstring, you can just string your bow again and go back to hunting. And so the strings, two strings to the bow, are two jobs at all times for the husband, so he can hunt food. In case one of the jobs falls through, he's got another job to fall back on. He also found support for two jobs in Acts chapter 10, verse 7. It says that one of Cornelius's servants was a soldier, but he was also a servant. So he believed that that meant that he took an income from the army as a soldier, but he was also taking an income as a servant, like a butler as well. Richard Baxter on Chapters from a Christian Directory, page 156, supported the idea as well. Somebody may ask, he said, may one man have many trades or callings? His answer, not when he doth in a covetous desire to grow rich, disable his poor neighbors to live by him on the same callings, seeking to engross all the gain to himself, nor yet when they are callings which are inconsistent, or when he cannot manage one aright without the sinful neglect of the other. But otherwise it is as lawful to have true two trades as one. So in other words, number one, it's not okay to have a lot of jobs if that means being a monopolist and taking everybody else's jobs away. Number two, it's not okay to be so absorbed in one job that you're neglecting your other job. But if you can manage two jobs and balance them out equally, yes, by all means, you can increase your income that way. And although it is possible to grow rich by having two jobs, got to be careful not to be covetous about it. So yes, he believed that that was the method to grow rich. It was always by having two jobs, and there's always different arrangements. Okay, that idea, that two jobs idea, can always be arranged to get better and better and better and better. It allows for a type of financial improvement to occur. So don't always just keep it in terms of an 80-hour a week idea or something, or a paycheck idea, something. Think in terms of side hustles. Think in terms of how can I use the computer? How can I use remote work? How can I use technology to save time and increase income through the two jobs idea? Richard Steele was a Puritan in the Religious Tradesman. He taught the two jobs concept to increase income as well. So I'm going to pull that up. So he said on page 158 and 159, invading others' callings is contrary to contentment. So in other words, being a monopolist and taking people's jobs away. Many times people have complained to Amazon or to Walmart for doing this, taking a lot of small shop owners' jobs away from them. Diligence and contentment are no enemies to each other, but when persons endeavor to grasp at all the business of their own callings, or to invade those of others merely to increase their riches, it is too plain an indication of a covetous disposition. So again, the idea of retail monopolies through Amazon and Walmart, some people have complained, say the mom and pop retail stores don't exist anymore because of these people. In some cases, indeed, he says, it may be allowable for one person to engage in two or three callings, that means two or three jobs at the same time, but then a just necessity and not an avaricious desire of wealth must oblige you to it. In some cases and situations, one trade not being sufficient for a comfortable subsistence, then they must not be inconsistent with each other. If the one hinder the other, or both together disturb and hinder you from other indispensable duties to God or man, they are to be esteemed and avoided as snares. And further, you may not follow them to the prejudice of the common good. For we are not so to love ourselves as to exclude all regard to others. Other families may be supported by the trade which you can live well enough without, and the wise and good God, who is the common parent of mankind, will be far from approving such selfish and uncharitable enterprises. In like manner also, you should beware of invading anything else that is proper to your neighbor. If his house or shop be ever so convenient or advantageous to you, you should neither desire nor endeavor to procure them to yourself to his prejudice, nor use any method in order thereto which you would think unreasonable if the case was your own, but govern yourself by equity and charity in every part of your conduct towards others. So again, he's against the idea of buying people out, being a monopolist. Okay, that Monopoly game, that board game Monopoly, he's basically saying, no, this is wrong. Have two jobs to increase your income. There's nothing wrong with that.
okay? Just don't go to the point where you're doing monopoly and you're trying to, literally buy everybody out. That's messed up. And again, if one hinder the other, okay, in other words, it's exactly what Baxter was saying. Make sure you can actually handle doing this with your work schedule, that you're not going to be so absorbed with one job that you're not going to be neglecting the other one. But this is exactly what Grant Sabatier is talking about. And he's 2019, he's millennialmoney.com, and he's just discovered this on his own. And what he doesn't realize is that he's hacked into a biblical principle that Solomon talked about in Ecclesiastes 4, in Proverbs 31, that Richard Baxter talked about in Chapters in a Christian Directory in the 1600s, that Richard Steele talked about in The Religious Tradesman in the 1600s, and that William Perkins talked about in Treatise of the Vocations in the 1500s. This is a really old concept of increasing what they called increasing riches or growing rich. And this is how it was done. This is always how it's been done. It's a timeless, time-tested truth. It's the 2 jobs and 3 jobs concept. Now, just how exactly this has to be played out depends upon the person. But it's just a simple concept. No stocks are involved. And then the supplemental surplus money that is created by the 2 and 3 jobs concept is then socked away into a savings account. It's just as simple as that. God bless you out there. This is John with WesleyGospel.com.
Hi, this is John with WesleyGospel.com. A little biblical economics entry here. I am convinced that the most surefire way to build wealth, and again, this is very theoretical for me at this point, but I have tested my theories out and seen some effect upon them, but I'm still augmenting. All economic elements have to be augmented over time in order to evolve, improve them. But I'm convinced, at least theoretically at this point, that the most stable, most traditional, most reliable way to build wealth, even the way they used to build wealth in Bible times, was through the marketing and customers, and just keeping it at that. That's it. Having a phenomenal marketing method that attracts customers, and then having a steady stream of customers, and that is where the money comes from. That is where you start to stack up the money into savings accounts from. That's where it's coming from. It's only coming from that. Now, the world of personal finance is extremely distracting. Especially, the most distracting element is investing. And I spent most of my thoughts on economics last year on this podcast on investing, because there is so much literature and write-up and, should I say, jangling, worthless talk about investing, about stock investing especially. And can I just tell you that I believe that most of what exists in the category of investing is no different than gambling at a casino. That is my general impression. And that's looking back on it. And I might have to go back into my manuscript on biblical economics and re-edit some of my biblical investing chapter, because although there are examples of investing in the Bible, it is imprudent to invest when you could just be stacking up money from customers. And that is hindsight being 2020. Because it doesn't matter what type of investment you're looking at. If you invest in a house, if you invest in stocks, if you invest in anything, the value, if you invest in gold and silver, if you invest in stocks and bonds, it doesn't matter. They're all the same because they always have these fluctuating monetary values. And so while it's true that they can have an upward incline sometimes, that is not a for sure thing. And even ETFs and mutual funds still. It's so jaggedy and so unpredictable. It's also prone to play with your emotions and give you a sense of anxiety and panic. So while there is such a thing as Inspire Advisors, InspireInsight.com, and Biblically Responsible Investing, you might as well just call it biblically screened companies that will allow you to gamble with a Christian conscience. Christian gambling. And as a Pentecostal who agrees with most of what Assemblies of God's said, the Assemblies of God has a position paper against gambling. And I almost want to say that all forms of investing need to fall under that category. All forms of investing need to fall under that category. So I think that investing is a huge distraction from the prerogative of a person who's trying to be responsible with money, to be good with money. And if you really want to get further in this direction than what I'm talking about, and you're thinking to yourself, boy, this is crazy talk, I highly recommend you read Richard Steele's book, The Religious Tradesman, and William Matthews' book, Getting On in the World. Because what you're going to see in those books is an anti-investing sentiment that existed among the Puritans and existed among Christian men in Little House on the Prairie times. There was an anti-investing sentiment among responsible Christian men. The idea was, have your own business, be a solopreneur, be an entrepreneur, and get as much customers as you can. Have a strong bulldog determination to market your family business, and let all of your money be accumulated through customers. And just keep it that until your dying day. And if you can build a pile for retirement, let it come from the customers and the marketing that you have derived for your business. Don't play around with the New York Stock Exchange. Avoid it like the plague. Don't play around with stocks. Don't play around with NASDAQ. It's no different than going to Las Vegas. And that is something that, out of all the 35 books on economics that I read, on personal finance that I read last year, those two have come out to me with that message. That's what makes them so unique. The Religious Tradesman by Richard Steele, Getting On in the World by William Matthews. Don't allow yourself to be tempted by the glitz and glamour of the stock exchanges. Don't allow yourself to be tempted and seduced by the gambling spirit of investment. There's so much talk around it and so-called quote-unquote investment strategies, and it can pull you into a rabbit hole. The most popular stock investing website is called The Motley Fool for a reason, because it is a fool's errand. And let me tell you from personal experience, whether it's stocks or houses or silver or gold, all of these are transmutable forms of money, and they almost always lead to loss. If you pay $1,000 and you try to get rid of it and change it back into money, it will be $400 later. You will always end up with some sort of a subtraction, even though you went into it beforehand thinking that it would become a multiplication. While there's always this pie in the sky chance that you could double your money, usually that never happens. Usually the opposite is the case. Usually you put $1,000 into it and you end up with 400. And unless you have enough experience of doing that over and over and over again, you're not going to be able to draw the conclusion. And you're going to keep on holding out this self-deceived hope that investing is different than gambling. It's not. Betting on horses, going to a casino, it's all the same. New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, it's all in the same category. And I would advise you, like Richard Steele did in The Religious Tradesman, like William Matthews did in Getting On in the World, to stay away from stocks. And I don't believe that the Sprinkle Publications version of Religious Tradesman has the section against securities. But there is a version on Google Books that there was an addendum on there called A Present for an Apprentice. A Present for an Apprentice, which was an attachment, an appendix attachment onto the Religious Tradesman. And that's where he really warns against, just stay away from investing. All forms. And that was the Lord Mayor of London who wrote that, who was a Quaker. He warned against all forms of stock exchanges, putting them in the same category as casinos. So, why is that? Because you could build wealth through customers, not stocks. Customers, not gold and silver. Customers, not real estate investing. Right? It's customers that you have to run after, and if you want to build wealth. And you need to, in order to get them, you need to have a winning marketing method. So drill into these two things. Marketing plus customers equals building wealth. Marketing plus customers equals building wealth. Don't get distracted by investing. You'll just lose money. Don't mess with it. It is a trap. It is a rabbit hole. And you might think, well, I haven't tried all of the investing strategies. Don't do it. Don't do it. All of them are the same class. There's a reason why there's so many. Because they all end up doing the same thing. They all end up making you lose money. Why are there so many investment strategies? Think about this for a moment. It is because none of them work. It is because it's been an issue of, oh, I don't want to give up on this, I'll try it this way. I don't want to give up on this, I'll try it this way. I don't want to give up on this, I'll try it this way. It's an endless list of people going down a rabbit hole, not being able to succeed at investing because it's unpredictable. So don't get pulled into investing thinking that you're going to become a millionaire that way. That's not how you become a millionaire. It's a scam. It's one of the major scams of the business world. There's so many scams in the business world. Investing is one of the biggest scams of them all the forms of investing. So if you want to stay away from scams, if you want to really build wealth for yourself, do it the way most of the guys did it in the Bible. Started their own business and got customers. I hate to show this as an example because it's such an example of sin, but it does goes to show an example of marketing, although misapplied. Matthew 21:12 to 13, Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. He said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers." There's two things, or at least three things we can observe here. Number one, church is not supposed to be a place where business activity is going on. It's supposed to be a place of prayer only. But there's a second observation that can be made here. The temple happened to be a place where tons of people were going in and out, in and out, in and out, much like Walmart or the mall. And there's a principle here, all right? Men of business understood that if there was a place or a thoroughfare where there was a ton of people, ton of pedestrians going in and out, in and out, in and out, some of those people could be turned into customers and you can get money from them, okay? Now, the third thing that you need to understand from this passage is that although people were getting customers and were getting money from them, they were overcharging. They were making it a den of robbers. And so you always want to, when you offer services for anything, whether it's selling pigeons or something else, that you always charge a fair, competitive price. You never charge more than is reasonable, right? So a fair price, putting your business in the eyes where there's tons of people going to see it. And then you offer your service for a fair price. You pull in as many customers as you can. There's a principle there. And so as you can see, although the people in this case were unethical businessmen, they all understood a very simple principle: marketing. If you want to get customers, you have to put your business in a place where a ton of people are going to see it. That's marketing. And so I believe today, because cold email marketing has been shot to pieces, the number one way that people, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, need to market for customers is going to be websites, Google ads, Google presence, SEMrush, SEMrush, and things like this. Now, if you don't know how to do all that, you can go on Fiverr.com and people will do that stuff for you. They'll build a website for you. They'll get it on SEMrush. They'll try to push it onto Google and get you some Google traffic on your site. But the big thing is you got to have, and I would have to say, get yourself on Google Maps if possible. But I would try to stay away from Google reviews if possible. So I don't know. You've got to get on there, but you don't want to put yourself into a place where you can get Google reviews, because once a person puts a review on there, it's there forever. So that's the one thing that I've always been wary of. I'm going to be pushing in this direction in the near future, but I'm very wary of the whole Google reviews concept. Entrepreneur Magazine, a couple of issues ago, a person was asked what steps did he take, a businessman, to make his first $1 million amount. He said, me and my friend came up with this idea called ABZ Company. And when you're starting something, you think about Z, which is the end of the journey. It's exciting and awesome inspiration and motivation to get up each morning. But besides that, you should only focus on the letter A and the letter B, because you get your first customer and then you get your second customer. Well, okay. So, that was a weird thing, but he's basically thinking about, you make your first $1 million amount by thinking in terms of a 3-step process. And, it's just customers. That's how you make $1 million. You need to get a business started. for yourself, and then just market the heck out of it and start getting an endless train of projects, an endless train of customers and projects for them. And just remember that when you do this, that a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Proverbs 11:1. Charge a fair price. Don't undersell yourself, but don't overcharge your customers, and you'll be fine. You'll always have plenty of projects. That's how you can make $1 million. Most people are not willing to do that because they just want to go get a job. Nobody's going to make $1 million just doing a job, right? The only way you can make $1 million by doing a job is by staying at the same company for 30 years and using mutual funds and never getting fired. What are the chances of that happening? So in most cases, that doesn't work out for people. So the traditional method is what is best. Get a company, market the heck out of it, and get as many customers as possible, and stay away from investments, and just save practically as much as you can from the customer payments that you get. God bless you out there. This is John with WesleyGospel.com.